live chat. I have just made it in on time to be here at the starting time, 2000 hours Central European time. I am now in London, so it was 1900 hours here. And so I made it in only just, I might say. I was in central London. So I'll give you a little bit of an explanation about what I was doing today before I come on to the main part of the video. Yesterday I was in St James's Park, which is the park which is in front of Buckingham, well, not really quite in front, to the side really, of Buckingham Palace, and they've got a very good selection of waterfowl there. For those who don't know it, I'm also interested in nature. And anyway, so I was there yesterday and I saw this bird called a red-breasted goose, and the red-breasted goose is actually, it's classified as being vulnerable. It's very rare in this country anyway. At least that's what I understand to be very rare. And I saw this bird, and I filmed it, and I got back here, and I thought, I'm going to film of that bird, so I'm going to get some more. Now, the red-breasted goose has been known to sort of flying off with barnacle geese and Canada geese, amongst others, and there's no shortage of them in London. So I suspect that somehow, I don't know where from, this bird normally lives in northern Siberia. It lives on the very tip of the north of Russia, but it does, however, used to fly south the Caspian Sea. But when the Soviet Union started messing up its agriculture and so creating a drought, creating the the ecological disaster of the Aral Sea, and then the red-necked goose was rather threatened. He's had to start finding other places. And the thing is, there's only about 80% of the birds nest in 5 places, and so this is why it's not so many of them. Anyway, so I saw this bird, and I saw it again today. I thought, and it was strange enough, it was almost in the same place it was in yesterday. So I thought I would just imagine that. So if a goose hangs out in St James's Park, then it's going to be there. Anyway, so I was there. Then I started noticing there was lots of people with Ukrainian flags. And I remembered that President Zelensky will be in London today. So there's lots of people there. There was a pro-Ukraine demonstration opposite 10 Downing Street, so you would have seen that. Indeed, his car, I think, drove past. I'm not absolutely certain, because I was actually at the time sending a message to somebody when it happened. But maybe he drove past. But anyway, so it occurred to me that it would have been maybe interesting for some people to actually see those of you who live outside the United Kingdom, to actually see the United States. Also, see London, I should say. Also, I could have done something like a live chat or something like that from there. Now, anyway, what I want to talk about today is the Bethnal Green tube disaster, because on the 3rd of March 1943, 173 people were killed when it's a bit difficult to say the reason why, but it was somebody tripped on one of the stairs, and then lots of other people piled on top of them, and they died in a crush. Now, I remember that my grandmother used to have a copy of the Guinness Book of Records. So when I was staying at my grandmother's house, I used to like reading it. Now, this copy of the Guinness Book of Records was a red cover. I think it was around 1970, something like that. And I remember reading about it there. So I don't know what it was in the deaths caused by panic or stampede or something like that. So I knew about it, but I often hear that people say that they knew nothing of it. Indeed, the mayor of London, when the monument was opened to the victims of the Bethnal Green tube disaster, he said something along these lines, that he'd never actually heard of it before. So that I found I find that rather unusual. Now, even today on this site, somebody wrote that this has been the tube disaster. He didn't know why. So it was so little known in London. You're thinking about 173 people being killed in a matter of a few minutes is quite a lot. And I can explain how this actually came about, because it came about because there was a belief that there was an air raid, and the air raid itself caused a panic of people because the buses, 3 buses, arrived at more or less the same time, and people just piled out of the buses into what they thought was shelter. But I'm going to go back a little bit in time and explain how. If you look at a map of the London Underground, you'll see that Bethnal Green is on the central line. And indeed, it's in a quite central position today. But at the time, it was at the very end of the line. Indeed, the Underground didn't actually extend to Bethnal Green. So it's perhaps a bit unfair to say this was Bethnal Green tube station disaster, because it wasn't a tube station, tube being the word for the underground railway that runs there. The railway line ended at Liverpool Street. Now, in London, as happened in many other places in recent years, the former suburban railways have been sort of brought together within the transport network. I mean, if you look also at Paris, for example, Paris started doing this in the 1970s. So you've got this huge system called the RER, which runs, when I lived there anyway, east, west, north, south, and it probably got lots more lines now on top of this. And a similar thing's been happening in London. To give you an example, which may be more known, is Docklands Light Railway, which was built in the 1980s, so I can remember when it was getting built. And the Docklands Light Railway, though, uses infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure was built in the 19th century, even though the railway itself is super modern, or at least it was when it was built. It's now looking a bit aged, but it started at 40 years ago. But for example, you see these bridges. There was a bridge I went to see in Limehouse Basin, which is one of the ports where timber used to be unloaded. In fact, I think it was the first place where pneumatic unloading devices were used. And I don't quite know how they worked, but there you can see a bridge, which is the second oldest railway bridge in the world. And it's now used by the Docklands Light Railway, and it had been there for 25 years and it didn't do anything. So I thought this was really super impressive. That's the sort of thing that impresses me. So the objective was for Bethnal Green that it was part of an extension of the central line. Now, if you look at the western end of the central line, that was then the same as where it is today. But on the eastern line, what they wanted to do was take it out a bit further to Stratford and then link it in to existing lines and join it all together. And this was a great plan for development of London, and this was it's called the New Works Programme. And it wasn't just London, in fact, I mean, that was the entire country, but the New Works Programme was going to cost £42.3 million. Now, actually, in today's money, that mightn't sound like a great deal, even if you put it into today's money, but it's for the time, this was a huge project. Now, let's also bear in mind that, for example, in other cities, metros are being developed. For example, in Moscow, which started in 1933, if memory serves me correct. I think the first train, the Moscow Metro, ran in 1935, and others were being built. Now, the East End of London, as I sort of mentioned in my Jack the Ripper films. Now, obviously, this is 60 years later, but nearly 52 years later, was area of dense population. So this was sort of where the industrial areas had been, so people worked in the factories and things which are there. Much higher population density than, it was near the ports, but the ports were a target for the Luftwaffe. So it was during the Blitz that it was the East End above all that was attacked. And so therefore shelters were needed. Now, there's various types of shelter. So some people just had a sort of corrugated piece of corrugated metal, then which they buried in the garden, and then they sort of got in there, and obviously it wouldn't do much good if a bomb fell on top of you, but if a bomb fell nearby, then you should be all right. But as far as the Bethnal Green it was a great potential bomb shelter, because there was this, it was an underground station. It had been completed, although the railway hadn't yet been put through there. And so it was suitable to holding as many as, for example, 10,000 people could actually live there. More or less, I may be exaggerating a little bit. The maximum ever held was 7,001 go, but it had 5,000 bunk beds inside. It also had a canteen, had a sick bay. There was a trained nurse who was almost always there. The doctor came from time to time. There was also a concert hall, and there was a public library which could hold 4,000 books. And the public library was there and had so many books because the local library had been bombed. And so they managed to take the books that they could from it. When I was in Ukraine, I was in a place called Borodyanka, and I saw that the Russian army had been there. They'd done an incredible amount of damage, but there's one place where the library, and now they'd been looting all over the place. The strange thing was this library, and a lot of books were still strewn around, but there was no windows in the thing because they destroyed everything, but the books they hadn't actually taken with them, and the people that went there and started to catalogue everything. Strange, I picked one up, and it was a story. It was in Russian, but it was a British book, and anyway, so I don't know why I started talking about that, but anyway, so the damage done to libraries. It was Robinson Crusoe. That was it. It was Robinson Crusoe, and I found that in the library in there. So anyway, so you can got all these people. So you got 5,000 sleep down there, and 10,000 can actually stay down there. But this is an area where there would be around 100,000 people. I was in Bethnal Green last week, and I walked up the canal, which is there. The Regent's Canal, so starts at Limehouse Base, and then it sort of goes round in a curve around London. So it's like the early ring road, if you like, the ring canal around London. And I thought Bethnal Green looked really, really nice. Indeed, when I filmed this video, the video I did on the tube disaster, I thought that Bethnal Green looked quite okay. I mean, some of the 19th century places still stand, but I can remember Bethnal Green as being not a particularly pleasant place to go to. So I mean, that's only 40 years ago, and so it was run down then, but I think it was even run down in the 30s as well. So the point of putting a shelter there was a very good idea because of the huge density of the population. Now, one thing that with this shelter though is that the underground station was still a building site, and because it was still a building site, work hadn't been done. And so this also adding to the problems of the war. Now in Moscow, they continued to build the underground even during the war. I think it had stopped for a few weeks during the end of 1941, or from the autumn of 41, but they started again in 42. In London, they really didn't do anything. But the thing is this, that if this is going to be made into a bomb shelter, then work needed to be done on it. And so there was an entrance, and now the entrance isn't this wide, elegant entrance that was got today in several places around the crossroads where it is based. Then effectively it was a bit like going into a garden shed. So there, as you might imagine a works entrance to be. So what you do is you entered into this like shed, and then there was a set of stairs going down. Now the problem was with the stairs is the stairs hadn't been prepared. That's the number one thing. Now, any of you who've actually built a house, or you've worked in construction or anything like that, and you know the stairs which haven't been prepared don't always look nice, but and that may be bare concrete, but it's not always, it's not necessarily bad. But then it was worse. Now there's a number of reasons for this. It's lack of materials. That's what they said. Other problems though were there were no handrails. Now if you any underground station, or most of them anyway, and certainly Bethnal Green, they've got a division in the middle, so that's a handrail going down the middle. And also they've got the there was these you've got the ends of the stairs, so some metal bit. I can't remember what they're called, if I ever knew what they were called. So that keeps the stairs in place and stops people tripping up. And that wasn't there. But what they did have is that they still had left the timber slats. Now the timber slats were concrete was poured into these molds, and they had the end of that timber slats, and the timber, which should have been removed, but it hadn't been removed. And the timber had rotted in the damp climate, and this made the stairs uneven, and this all had tragic consequences for what actually happened when lots of people sort of actually piled out into the shelter on the 3rd of March 1943. Right, well, I think I'll do this in parts, because I think I'll leave this for the to be the first part of this talk on the Bethnal Green disaster. To me, I think this is quite an interesting subject. So and it shows that life of normal people in the Blitz. What I'll do in the next part, I actually talk about the bombing of London, and how people actually lived in these circumstances, and I'll come on to the responsibility for the disaster that occurred. Okay, so well, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that was interesting, and so from me in London, all the best for now, and bye. Ah.